And we are live. What's going on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube Live? It is your man, Coach Rowe. Today is Tuesday, different day than Wednesday, but Tuesday. I'd like to welcome you to the first row. And since it is Tuesday, we are officially off of the pilot episode of the Men's Circle. We are moving to episode 1 of the Men's Circle. We actually are going to have a couple other men joining us throughout the night, but right now, so far on the panel, we got tonight Brother Bruce Gatewood, new to the Men's Circle, but definitely not new to the first row. We also have returning my brother Tim and my brother John this evening. Man, there's so much that's in store for tonight's show. I cannot wait to get started. I'll let everybody quickly introduce themselves, but this time I'm learning this show layout. This time, I'm going to actually have you share in your introduction what the topic means to you. Tonight's topic that is going to be up for discussion and conversation is measuring success. I like to share what the topic means to me, but I'm going to share what the topic means to me last. I'm going to go from left down and then right. So to my left on my screen, I have you, Brother Bruce. If you could introduce yourself really briefly and then share what tonight's topic, measuring success, means to you, I greatly appreciate it.
First, I want to start by saying thank you, Billy, for having me on. My name is Bruce. Me and Billy go way back to middle school. Known the brother forever. Very instrumental figure in the growth that I'm currently on and that I've experienced over the years. So grateful for you to have me on. In terms of the topic, success and measuring success, right? To me, well, I start with the definition. I'm a definition guy. The accomplishment of an aim or purpose, right? And so for me, that's kind of broad. It's kind of, out there. And I started thinking about my personal success and how I measured that and how that has changed over my dogs. I am so sorry. That is terrible. And how that's changed for me over the years. But I basically measure my own success by the goals that I put forth for myself and how I go about accomplishing them. That's I measure success based on me and my accomplishments only, not on what everyone else is doing type of deal.
No, I get it. Absolutely. Below you, I have, and I appreciate you being here, by the way, Bruce. I appreciate all your support on the first row. Below you, I have Tim. Tim, if you could quickly introduce yourself since you were here last time, and then let's jump into what this topic means to you. You're on mute still.
Happens to me at work too. My name's Tim. I've said this in the previous one, but I don't have a memory of a time before Billy. That's how far we go back. I remember kindergarten. He says first grade, whatever have you. It's whatever. It's a long, long time. It's 35 plus years. But what this means to me is I always think of measuring success. I think of it like a gardener, right? So what's important when you're doing a garden or you're growing something is you got to have time to smell the roses before you go ahead and get that manure out to plant the next batch. Because if you don't smell the roses, all you're going to have is that smell, and you're not going to know what it's all for. So I always look at, for one, what does success look like? You got to first define that. What are you measuring to? What are you trying to achieve? Success is different for everybody. For me, success equals fulfillment. It's not about money. It's not about fame or really any of that. It's about, is what I'm doing and who I am fulfilling to me? Am I teaching, helping mold people, children, my employees at work, stuff like that. So that's what it means to me. Smelling the roses, to be short.
Gotcha. And definitely last but not least, I got you, Brother John. Introduce yourself really briefly, and then what does measuring success mean to you?
Yes. Thank you, Billy. Thank you for having me back. I'm John Yang. In terms of saying what does measuring success mean, Tim, I really like what you just said, like in terms of like how do you impact others? That goes a long way. So I think that's something that's I've been in terms of consistency that I've been struggling with. But there's there's different ways of measuring success. But for me, it's just staying consistency, like in terms of like my principles, the way how I expect myself to live. But yeah, so that's what it means to me. And also, Billy, I wanted to also add that I was thinking about you that last time, and I was like, man, Billy has always been a dude that you cannot just hate. You can't hate him. You could be mad and you like you want to hate him, but at the end of the day, you just can't hate him because with success and we talk about because like measuring success and you're always looking at others and then Billy, like you have always been one that where I'm always like admiring. We're like, man, like the dude is so cool. He always like seems to know what he's doing, like he knows where he's going. So that's something where I look towards to as like like you could say maybe like as like hey like as where I can compare myself. But we could talk a bit more about that where I say like we shouldn't compare to. So yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you, John. I appreciate that. I think it's measuring success. When I thought about this topic, I actually thought about it from a couple of different angles. One, I thought the comparative being like when you're measuring who you are compared to what you perceive other people to be, and we'll probably dive into that a little bit more in this conversation. But the perception of what we think other people, and in this case, what we think other men are doing. There's that comparison in measuring success. I also thought about how typically when we think about measuring success, we think about titles like, what do you do for a living and how that is perceived in society. And then I decided to intentionally move away from those thoughts, the comparatives and the title thought process of measuring success, and really looking at success as how do I measure success in a way that is what do I do in my life that's meaningful. That for me is where at this stage of my life, I'm really looking to try to thrive in. Like I'm looking to try to thrive in the meaningfulness and in some aspects, the legacy of the things that I'm leaving behind. Example being, I had a conversation with my middle son today, and we were talking and I was like, look, at some point you're going to look up and realize these things that I've been telling you, that dad has been telling you the truth, and you're going to probably wish that you listened to some of these things that I've shared with you. I said, but at some point when I pass away, I'm dead and I'm gone, you'll still be able to go to the first row and hear information that pertains to your life even though I'm not here anymore. To me, that is so much greater of a measurement of success than Billy is an analyst or he's a data analytics leader. That's such a much greater perception of success for me to be able to say, even though it may have been unintentional initially, unintentionally, I created a space to where after I am gone, my children and my children's children can go to and hear edifying information from somebody who is literally a generation or generation or two before their lifetime. That to me is a powerful measurement of success. And I say unintentionally because when I started off doing first row, that wasn't the intent. It was just like, okay, I had an experience, I want to share it. And so for me, tonight's conversation is really, though there are those like John, and even what you're saying, Tim and Bruce, there's those comparative aspects and measuring against ourselves and all these different things. I really want to get feedback and input from you guys on that depth of measurement of success and what it looks like when in the book that I wrote, Fire Your Job, Hire Your Passion, what it looks like when you're not leading with, oh, I'm an analyst. Because yeah, I'm an analyst today. I might be welcome to McDonald's. How may I help you tomorrow? And in either case, that doesn't depreciate my success as what I bring to the world. Like that doesn't depreciate my profession doesn't depreciate me because my profession is subject to change. What's not subject to change is what I choose to bring to the world. It's subject to my change, but it's not subject to change once that concrete foundation has been laid. And once you like every single show that I've done is now cemented in history. That can't change. I can't go and say, well, I did 200 shows on Wednesday, our first row, and now I didn't do 200 shows. No, I did over 200 shows. That's there, and that's concrete for me. So I would like to open up for those in the chat. I did put in what does success mean to you. So if you're watching via live, or even if you're watching via the replay, put it in the comments. But what does success mean to you, and how do you look at success? But with that, I do want to move into our first question on this particular topic. And that question is when were you introduced to success? Like, and this, I think, John, goes into that role model perspective of success, because we see it and we assume that that is success, and then we try to mirror and match that success along the way. Obviously, we add our custom flavor to it, but definitely interested to hear from the panel thus far. When were you introduced to success? What did that look like, and who exposed you to it?
Yeah. Hey, Billy. Let me start off on that. For me, I was thinking about this, and I would say it was started in grade school. Like with grade school, when you're competing or you're trying to achieve that letter grade A, and like so you're setting yourself a goal, or at least you're trying to play along with someone's system, and you try to you listen to them, you do what they say that you're supposed to be doing, and then you get that letter A, and then at that moment, you feel good. You're young, and you get in that A, you feel good. But like as I'm older now, I mean, I know we're just talking about the introductions to success, but like as I'm gotten older now, it's almost kind of like we're like, did that really represent who I am or who I was? Like although I got that grade, letter A or B, whatever it is, like, did that represent me? And like for me, I would say that it didn't. It like, yeah, I got A's, I got B's, I got F's before, but like it doesn't represent me. Like just like how you have said, Billy, that you could accomplish so much, or you could have a certain title, but that you created that, you achieved that, but that doesn't mean that is you. You did that. So that's kind of like something where I have learned now, that in terms of success, where it's you can't really have a system in having it measure you. I don't know, because it's different. So
I get what you're saying there, because sometimes our pursuit, and I'm going to use this very loosely, but our pursuit of success is, being that good child. Like, I'm just a good kid, and I'm, like you said, I'm a straight A student. And I actually experienced that with growing up, where my sister was a straight A student, and I probably could have been a straight A student, but I wasn't. The reality is I wasn't. And I think in my freshman year is when I said, okay, I'm going to get straight A's. And I think I got all A's and 1B. And part of that was because I had 8 classes in a 6 period school year. But I remember in getting all those A's and that 1B, at some point, I just was kind of like, okay, I mean, that's not bad. And if that's who I am, that's who I am. And maybe I'm not my sister, who's been getting straight A's since first grade through almost college. But being able to accept that when you are introduced to success, especially as a child, and that being performing well in school, that may not be who you are. And that doesn't mean that you will not necessarily be successful. So I thank you for bringing that in. I didn't see, somebody had unmuted. Was it you, Bruce, or Tim?
I mean, I'll go. It's funny for me because when I was young and in elementary school, I thought success was getting good grades, but the response that I got in my house, specifically, I should say, from my father, made me rethink success early. So at an early age, what I thought was, in order for me to be successful, I think the first time I was introduced to success or had a desire for it is, okay, I don't want to be like my dad, right? If I have kids, I don't want to be like this guy. So I learned by watching as long as I'm not like him, I'm going to be okay. And he gave me so many foundational blocks to not replicate. Like, do not build your house like this. This is not a good house. We're not going to do it like this. So I think and I think that's what I struggle with now. The first time I realized that I was introduced to success is like, oh man, I raised my kids. I'm nothing like my father. I have my own flaws and my own faults, and I've scarred my children in my own ways, but never like my father scarred me and my sister, right? So the first time I was introduced to the fact that, hey, you did it, it blew my mind. It's like, damn, my whole entire being and my whole goal for being successful was to be a good father, be a good man, show my daughters how a man treats their mother, show my daughter, just be what I didn't get, right? Then once I did that, my kids are 17 and 19. So I'm almost done, right? Like now it's like, okay, what do you do now? What is success now? And is that a midlife crisis? I laugh with my wife all the time. Like, what now what is success? And so that journey, that wave that I'm riding right now it's interesting. It's interesting.
It is fascinating because a lot of us do take that approach. And Tim, I seen you nod in your head. It's like, okay, this was the model of what I don't want to be, and trying to, in a sense, undo a character in your life who is not you, vicariously by doing the opposite of what you're seeing this person doing. I would challenge you or ask you, as you have taken that approach, do you feel like there may have been things that you missed along the way because you were so focused on what you didn't want to become that you maybe did not focus on some of the things that would drive you to who you wanted to become?
If you're asking me, the answer is 100% yes. And it's what I struggle with now. In the success that I found in not being my father, I don't know how to be me other than me, the father, me, the protector. My therapist asked me one time, he said, Bruce, when's the last time in 20 years, because me and my wife have been together for 20 years. He's like, when's the last time in 20 years you've made a decision for Bruce? It blew my mind. No one's ever asked me that. It blew like, what? People do that? You guys make decisions for yourselves? So yes, looking back, being so, laser focused on not being my dad, I feel like I forgot to foster the relationship with myself, right?
Yeah, no, making decisions for yourself. What a crazy thought. Tim, what you got?
It's funny because this is actually broken into like two categories. I like to say there's a part of me that was introduced to success in a misinformed way, where get these clothes, get this money, get this materialistic things, and that's what success is. And then you look around, and you see, man, everybody's racking up their credit card debt. Everybody's trying to please everybody else, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work, and that's like a side effect of financial success. So there's financial success, but where I started getting introduced to what my version of success is when I started asking myself, was I happy in various things that I was doing? Because there was times where I made really good money, but I was miserable. Like I hated, like show up to work in the morning, sit in the parking lot, and wonder, what if I just don't walk in today? What if I just don't go in? And conversations with you, conversations with my wife, really, and then things that I hear from just listening, reading books, really kind of shape like what is success to me? And finding that out was important because Bruce, you brought up something really major, man. Me and you have a lot in common with that. My parents were great parents, but they were limited based on the education level they had. They were not educated people, and they were emotionally scarred individuals. And when I look back and see the job they did, I'm like, I tell them all the time, I don't know how y'all did it. I don't know how you did it based off what you had to work with. And I, as a kid, always found myself saying, when I have kids in this situation, I'm going to do this differently. It's going to be different here. And I made little mental notes of that. And I tell my kids to do the same. I tell them, hey, I'm not going to be perfect. Remember the times where you don't agree with me. And then when you're an adult and you have children and you have that power in that situation, do you make the best decision that you feel is right. But man, when you tie so much of yourself and your success into others, what happens when those others are either grown to the level where they don't need it anymore, or they move on in some other way? Where you bring up some really provoking ideas as far as identity is concerned. Like, then who am I? What does that look like? What does a night alone with just me and my wife look like? You know, so that is some interesting stuff. But for me, the successes I realized was I felt successful not by what I did, but who I was and who I impacted. That's success for me. And that gives me fulfillment. And that's why I do the job that I do, and why I was drawn to it, and why I'm happy where I'm at. So that's what it means to me, and that's how I was introduced.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting between all of us, success was introduced from the perspective of childhood. It was at that malleable age where you're learning everything. Everything is new. You're discovering things about yourself, about life, about people, about the world. And we're either discovering that, going back to what you just said, Tim, we're either discovering that we either like how it feels or we don't like how it feels. That's what, to me, we're discovering in that measurement. And I think about the different ways I was introduced to success. One of the things that I accredit my work ethic to is being able to see my parents get up every single morning and go to work. And my dad was like a janitor at a school who had to be up and at the school by 5 a.m. And like clockwork, he was there. I mean, he might have had a couple of sick days, but my long-term memory of my father is up, getting ready, going to work. My long-term memory of my mother, up, getting ready, going to work. I think she started work at 6 or 6:30 in the morning. And so for me, that was my first introduction to work ethic, and work ethic is a part of my success of who I am today. But that perception didn't mean that my parents got everything right. And in fact, they got quite a few things wrong that I've tried to not bring into the lives of my children. And some of those things I have brought into the lives of my children just as a part of the nature of who I am. But that introduction to success, I also think about from the business aspect, my introduction to success. And this is where I think it comes into perspective, not necessarily perception. I'm sorry, not necessarily reality. I remember I had a business mentor, and he taught me a lot about business, a lot about sales, a lot about marketing. And I looked up to him. And I remember in looking up to him, one of the reasons I looked up to him is because he had called his Bank of America account, and he had like put his balance on the speakerphone. It's like $12,000 balance in his bank account. I'm like 17, 18 years old. I'm like, you got $12,000 in your account? Whew, I need to be like you. So I remember in having that conversation with him, like I thought he was super successful and I could learn a lot from him. But over time, I started seeing slight, subtle character defects of who I didn't want to be. And so you fast forward to, I don't even remember what year it was in the 2000s, because that was like 99, but in like, let's say 2015, 16, 17, this same person who introduced me to the concept that you could actually have a bank account with $12,000 in it is in prison, federal prison, for fraud, because his success that I perceived as, man, that's who I want to be, was set upon a Ponzi scheme. And so you think about those introductions to success, and how you might think that something is one way. You think that, man, they are living the life. They got the Benz, they got the Mercedes, they got the Beamer, they got everything that you think that you want materialistically, but then they lack a component that is non-negotiable for you. And so that introduction to me for success really began to teach me that there's a such thing as perceived success, and then there's a such thing as good success. And I began to start searching for myself for good success. So it didn't matter if I only had $200 or negative $200 in my bank account, as long as I knew I was progressing towards that path of good success, I could live with that, because I realized it was just a matter of time. And now I'm very fortunate and very blessed to be in a space where it's no longer a matter of time. The time is now in my life, to where I am in a financial place that I can actually do things to help people. I want to bring in Brother Glenn, but I'll leave with this on the introduction to success. When I think about the financial aspect for me of success, I used to think like, man, it's not about money. And I didn't understand why I wanted a bank account with $12,000 in it. But now, as I'm in my 40s, I understand that having that access to capital, having access to money, is power, in the sense that I can then take that money and pour it in the directions that I want to pour that money into. A very good point of this, or example of this, is with my wife and I having rental properties. I have the ability to determine what somebody's rent is. That is a very powerful position to be able to be in, which means I have the ability to set rent at what I perceive is a reasonable rent in order for a family to be able to afford groceries still. It's not about the $12,000 balance in my account. I have that as well, but it's about the ability to say, I can't pay for everything for you, because I'm not balling at that level. But what I can do is make sure that you can afford your rent each and every month, and that you'll still have a little extra at the end of the day. That I can help with. And so that's where I was introduced to success, was in my parents in my household, but further in the business world with my business mentor, who taught me some of the concepts, but didn't have the integrity backing that particular concept that I wanted to approach or to glean from him. With that, Brother Glenn, welcome. Glad you could join us, brother. We're talking about measuring success. Before you came on, we were talking about what the topic means to you. We're now talking about when you were introduced to success. So if you want to catch up.
Absolutely. Hey, guys, appreciate the opportunity. I'm looking forward to connecting with you guys again. Happy to see you. So as far as success, phenomenal topic. Regarding success, I would say success to me is a state of mind, right? I think that oftentimes we kind of think is this thing that you can hold in your hand, but I think is success is peace of mind, which is a direct result of self-satisfaction and knowing you made the effort to become the best in which you were capable of, right? And so, I say that to kind of tie into when I was introduced to success. I believe that that moment was in basic training, right? I've always been a very kind of competitive individual, but I think that based off of the mindset of the state of mind with success, it was introduced to me in basic training, because I wanted to be the best version of me, right? The individuals that were around me, I wanted to be the best individual when it came to the dress and appearance, when it came to the my boots being shined, my shaved face, just taking pride in that. And so for me, when I seen kind of hearing that question, when I look back, that's when I was introduced to it and understood and started to build upon it. And so, yeah, appreciate the question, man.
No problem. Really quick from the chat, I'm gonna bring in Mr. Mister's comment. He said, "Standard procedure for me is always get 10K in the bank before starting a new endeavor. I'm focused on that right now for the latest one, actually. Absolutely. And emergency funds are always a thumbs up. Absolutely. No, I'm with that on the success aspect of being able to kind of set those milestones. And that really kind of goes to what you just said, Glenn, going into boot camp and being competitive, but not just being competitive to the group. Because a lot of us, what we do is we compete to the average. And when we compete to the average, you land in the average. So you might beat out some people on the average and you may not. But even in my book, I talk about, being in the average is a very dangerous place to be in, because when cuts take place, you don't know where that slice takes out the average. Is it taking out like the high average or the low average or all the average, and we're only taking top earners? Like, you don't know where that slice takes place. So I love this concept of getting 10K in the bank and then moving on, because it kind of creates a foothold or a stronghold for you to progress to a level, build out at that level for another foundation, and then progress to the next level. And again, emergency funds, I could go on for days and days about the importance of emergency funds. No matter how you get that, even if it's just life insurance, if you pass away, that emergency fund aspect is important, because a lot of people don't have emergency funds. And I, for myself, Glenn, when we were catching up on our catch up on Friday, you were like, "Hey, have you always been on this financial kick?" And I was like, "Nah, my credit was horrible. My bank account was horrible. Like, everything was horrible." But it was through those lessons that I learned when things were horrible on how to repair those things, and to begin to establish better habits that would allow me to be able to handle emergencies when they come up, and not have to say, "Okay, well, where are we going to get this money from?" Or now rent's going to be late because I got to use $1,000 to repair the car, then go to work to make the money back to pay the late fees on rent, get caught up there, and then have to hopefully get everything else caught up before my lights go out. Like, that was my emergency fund strategy, but it didn't have any funds in it. So I love those particular concepts being brought in. The other thing I want to ask the panel is, so we talked about the introduction to success, but that was maybe the infancy of what we thought success was. But how do we measure success today? Like, what is it? What are your guys' standards, or what are your metrics for measuring success as it exists in your life today? Whether or not you have it is irrelevant, but like, either what are you striving for, or what are you maintaining within success in your life today?
I'm gonna jump in. So for me, on the journey I'm on, it actually has gotten even clearer. And what I try to do is I try to simplify it. I don't want to make it difficult for myself, and I want to stay focused. So for me, now success is measured by the goal that is written down and the means and actions that are taken by me to complete said goals, right? And just being accountable for, did you do, and like what I tell my kids, take a step every day towards your goal. And so I have to be accountable to myself. I look in that accountability mirror. Hey, did you take a step today to be the best version of yourself, like you've been claiming that that's what you want? And so I write it down. I write down everything. It's like my journal's my best friend. And it basically is just a list of things, almost cursed, I'm sorry, things that I need to do, right? Because for me, the older I get, the more it makes sense that my success is just that. It's mine. It's mine. And even if, because I always say, only my kids and my wife can judge me, right? Because they spend the most time with me. You guys know the Bruce that I show you. They see the Bruce every day, right? So do my goals line up with the judgment that I'm receiving from so if my wife was like, "Oh, lousy, and you're not paying no rent, you're not helping with the bills, you're not woo, 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 woo," that wouldn't align with the guy I'm trying to be. And that would cause for corrective action, right? Do the goals line up? Do the actions line up? And if they don't, for whatever reason, are you taking the corrective steps, Bruce, to be the person you want to be successful, how I see myself in my dream, right?
Absolutely. Anybody else?
I can go. Goals for me, it's about frequency. How often to where it means something. It's about the size of the goal, the actual measurement of it. Is it too lofty or is it not lofty enough? So it has to be achievable. It has to be reasonable enough for me to be able to achieve it, but it can't be so easy that it's meaningless. So it has to be something that keeps me going. And so those are the actual goal itself. But Bruce, you alluded to this and you kind of stated it, but reflection is big. I reflect every Friday about where I'm at as far as work. And in the morning time when I have my free time, because I start later on Mondays, the kids are at school. Wife usually isn't up yet. And I'll take the kids to school. And then that whole morning is reflection on me as the person. And I think about, am I where I want to be as a father? And I'm honest with myself. If the answer is yes, then what's making me that way? What can I maintain? How do I maintain it? Because unfortunately, success isn't a destination. Success is a plant that needs nourishment. And sometimes that plant outgrows its pot and needs to be replanted in a bigger pot so it can continue to grow. And at the same token, you can't leave success unattended or it will wither and die. So you have to, okay, what am I doing right? And what am I doing? What can I be doing for the things that I don't like? And a lot of that is I'll ask questions of my kids with the personal side. How do you feel with me as a father? Be honest. And then they'll tell me, kids, they'll give you like one word answers. Then you just ask them some open-ended questions and make them get them talking. And they'll give you when they tell you an answer, okay, then why? And you could do what they did to you when they were toddlers back to them and irritate them with the whys. And then I think about myself as a husband. Am I giving my wife what she needs? Do I feel like she's satisfied in the relationship? If I'm not certain on certain aspects, I'll just ask her and I'll make mental note that this is what I want to follow up with her on. And then as far as work, it's funny. I had a meeting with my boss this morning. She reached out to me. She said, "Hey, can I talk to you real quick?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And she goes, "Just so you know, I'm putting you in for supervisor distinction." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Thank you." And she goes, "You don't really seem surprised." And I love that. And the reason why I wasn't surprised is because I reflect on what I do, and I know I'm doing a really good job. My people are developing. I have great relationships with my consultants. So I already expected somebody was going to notice at some point, but that's not what gives me a fulfillment. The recognition doesn't give me the fulfillment. The watching the people grow and develop and move on to other things, that's what gives me fulfillment. So how do I measure that? It's okay, where am I at in those areas? What's a goal for that thing? And what's a goal that's going to make me work? But if I don't achieve it, isn't going to shut me down and make me feel bad. Because it's funny, when I talk to my consultants, we talk about coaching goals and I have them have a say in their goals. But when I ask them how they're doing, they always shoot to the negative first about what they're not doing and how they feel about this. And I always have to be the one to say, "Hey, let's smell the roses here. There's good here. Tell me what you like." And I have to recalibrate them because we're so conditioned as a society with negative news. The old saying, no, nothing travels as fast as bad news, right? Good news is like, "Oh yeah, whatever. Congrats, text, bye." But somebody does something wrong, Tina cheated on Willie. Oh man, let me hear that. Let me air all that out. It's just the society that we live in. But so in a way, we're conditioned to the negative, and to find times to reflect on not only the negative and the things that you can improve on, but to really understand what's going right and why that is, to maintain that. That's how I measure success.
Man, you said a lot there, brother, but I love that landing on being able to emphasize the positive. And I think honestly, a lot of us would think better or higher of ourselves if we actually took the time to look at the positive. Don't get me wrong, I make mistakes. My wife will tell you I make mistakes. Like we had a situation this past weekend where we just had to say, it's funny, Glenn, we get off the phone and I'm like, "We're going to have a great weekend." And then we catch a flat. And oh, that just changed the whole atmosphere. And that reflection time for me allowed me to say, okay, what are you really frustrated about? Yeah, you're frustrated the cars are flat. You're already doing the math on how much it's going to cost to replace this tire. If the rim is damaged, how much it's going to cost to replace that. You're already doing all that stuff. And then you're somewhat frustrated because you feel like your wife, because my wife was driving, you feel like your wife could have missed this road hazard. You feel like she could have avoided it. Um, and that's an easy place, like you said, to go to the negative, right? It's easy to go to the negative. And often when we go to the negative, we will focus on other people and not us. Um, so to first off, focus on the positive. Hey, my wife is taking me on this trip to go off-roading. Like, that's super positive. And I had an amazing time doing that. And I continue to tell her, babe, that was a really good gift, like a thoughtful gift that I'm truly appreciative of. That's the first thing, to go to that positive. But then in my reflection time, I spent time really thinking about, well, what were you really frustrated? You know, she didn't hit the rock on purpose. Like, she didn't drive an hour and a half away from our house to a dead cell phone signal area to hit a rock. Like, that was not what her intention was. But I started thinking in my reflection and reflecting on myself as the husband, because that is a factor of success for me. Who I am as a husband, who I am as a father is a factor and a measure of success for who I am overall as Billy. And I started thinking about how the day before, because we had rented a car, how she was saying it was a little difficult for her to drive that car. And I was thinking, like, it's not really that difficult to drive this car. And then we're driving on the road, and I'm kind of watching her over the past 12 hours kind of struggle with driving. And she hadn't been driving for like 6 weeks. Um, and so then I start thinking about how it was a failure for me to even allow her to drive, not because she can't drive, but I seen as her husband that she was struggling with something. And I didn't step in and say, with my judgment, hey, babe, I'm going to drive for this trip. Maybe you can drive like in the towns and stuff, but I'm going to drive for the long haul in this trip to give you some space to get more comfortable with this vehicle. And that frustration, then, because it's easier to, my favorite word, blame-agize, that frustration then is projected on how she didn't avoid the obstacle and how we have a flat and I have to change the flat, versus, because it's easier than me saying, as a husband, you didn't take the appropriate actions. And though you don't know what's going to happen, you did see some signs that you were concerned about and you didn't address them. And that's a failure on your part as a husband. Um, but then to turn around and measure the success overall of who I am as a husband, it looks at the positive. You're at least willing to reflect on where your frustration is coming from, which is a positive thing. Even if it's negative, that what you're focused on is negative, that's a positive thing. And my wife and I often have conversations. She'll say, babe, you're really good at pivoting emotionally faster than I am. You're good at hearing an objective and saying, okay, I need this change. And then you move to that change and you begin to stay on that path of the change. Not that I don't fall off from time to time, but I begin to stay on the change faster than she can. So that happens because of my willingness to reflect. And I think for probably most of us, we have at least some kind of set out or even unscheduled time of reflection that we spend to be able to really look at the overall men that we are, and the overall success that we have. Because again, to me, it doesn't come down to the material things, because you can have all the material things and have honestly a shitty family. Like, just the reality, you could honestly have a family that is falling apart at the seams because it has zero leadership in it. That to me isn't successful. Now, you could still be a great leader and have a family that's falling apart at the seams, but at least you know you're putting in that effort and giving the examples and giving the space to measure that success. And lastly, before I let somebody else speak, the other thing about measuring success for me today is not just how I pivot, evolve, change over time, but how willing I am to do the work. To me, that is a significant factor in my success, because then it doesn't matter whether or not I succeed or fail. That's not the measurement. Whether you succeed at something or fail at something is not the measurement of success. It is my willingness and ability to do the work that it allows me to say, hey, look, I did all the work that I could possibly do, and it still didn't work out. Man, I learned a lot. That's all I got. And moving on to the next thing. That is a measurement of success for me today that I constantly engage with, because not everything that I do works out. Sometimes things just don't work out, and that's the way it is. So with that, I'll yield the mic and let somebody else speak.
Just two quick things before we move on to somebody else. One, piggybacking off what you said about measurement of success, with like you see people with all the money in the world and they have, you know, crappy families. Think about all the people that you see that are rich, famous, has all this adoration from the public that kill themselves. All these lottery winners that kill themselves. They got all the money and they can't. Life isn't meaningful enough for them still. That's one thing. The second thing I'll say is, as far as measuring success, when's the last time you thought about how you were 5 years ago compared to who you are today? When's the last time you looked at yourself 10 years ago to who you are today and notice and really appreciate your own growth? We don't do that enough. We just don't. Especially men, we don't do that enough. We always think about what could we do? What more could we have done? And sometimes that's setting us up for failure instead of success.
That's that smelling the roses. That's that smelling the roses. And I feel like the more I would speak for myself, the more I reflect on who I used to be, and I think about the man I am today, it's undeniable growth. It's undeniable growth if that's what you're working towards. You know what I mean? Good. That's a great point. Sorry.
I mean, and that's even a way to measure success. Because I know the Glenn I was 20 years ago and the Glenn I am at 41 is completely different. And so, and I think one of the things that I do now to measure the success versus, 20 years ago was, being intentional with that time as far as self-reflecting. And so, and I know a couple gentlemen mentioned it on here, but so every Sunday after church, I make sure I'm very intentional with carving out time before the evening, before I lay down, to really look at the previous week and then creating the goals for that next week, right? And so, and ultimately, generally around October of every year is where I'll create my new business plan, right? Which includes, business, self-development, and family, right? And so for me, every Sunday, those are the three main areas of what I'm thinking about as far as the goals that I set the previous week. How close did I hit those goals? Did I not hit them? Was it due to lack of effort? Because again, that's how I'm measuring my success, is the effort piece of it, right? Because when it comes to investing into my family, investing that time, I may say, hey, I want to spend, I want to make sure that I'm dedicating 5 days, at least an hour, where my wife and I are just connecting, sitting down over tea, conversing, whatever the case is, or regarding the business, I want to make sure that I'm pausing enough and being still to recognize those measurements, right? Those milestones, to see if I hit those markers or not. It's almost like being at a shooting range and you're hanging up a target, that target being your goal for the week, right? And then you being able to just shoot down at the range, but you're not hitting anything, right? And just because it could be due to lack of effort, it could be lack of focus, a number of things, but that 1 day a week allows me to recalibrate if I need to recalibrate and adjust my sights. And so for me, I'm constantly looking at that dial every single week. And I'm trying to be very, very intentional, and I'm committed to doing it. So I'm carving out that time weekly to do that. Now, here and there, I definitely do miss a week. But again, that's where that accountability partners come in, because some of the folks in my circle, they know that, hey, on Sundays, I'm spending at least a couple hours. And so on Monday, when we're talking over the phone, they're like, hey, G, what are your goals for the week? How close did you come to hitting them from last week? Okay, what adjustments do you need to make, right? Because I understand that I can put in the effort, but because I am human, I can, my stamina is only so good. And so sometimes I need that guy to my left and my right that can kind of carry me through the finish line just through a conversation, right? I can call Ro and just be like, hey, what does your week look like? Just kind of small talking with him for 20 weeks. And for me, that might be juice enough to keep me going to dive deeper into that effort that I need to cross that finish line. So that's kind of how I measure it.
Glenn, that's such a great point. I'm sorry, John. I'll keep it short. So two things that you said, Glenn, and that Tim said that resonate, and it kind of ties into the comparative, right? Tim, you said something earlier about openly talking to your wife, talking to your children, and then being accountable about the questions that you ask and the answers that are received, right? Well, for me, I've been doing that with my children and my wife since forever, right? I tell her all the time, it's a gift and a curse having a man that's not scared to talk about his emotions or his feelings or the things that he wants and needs. It's a gift and a curse, because I'm gonna say exactly what I want and what I need. I'm gonna ask you directly, and how the success gets measured is when I ask again, when I check back in, are you saying the same things? Because if I ask my wife, what do you need from me as your partner? And then 6 months from now, I check in again and I say, hey, babe, what do you need from me? And that list is the same. Well, that's a visual indicator that is undeniable. Hey, bro, there's no growth there. Hey, bro, you failed there. Like, and it's the same with writing my goals down. So when I ask my children, what can I do to be a better dad? And, you got to filter through the nonsense, from when I think my oldest was 7 the first time I asked her that. And as she grows up, these answers change and they evolve, but they also are like tracking my growth. So like when you put the target up for target shooting, like you said, or your accountability partners, having a way to track your goals and be accountable is another way that grow or a success is measured. Growth as well, I guess.
John, what'd you have?
I love this. This is so awesome. I love the reflection. You're looking for growth. I'm one who thinks very negatively about me. So I love the way that the positive thinking. Compare yourself to who you were like 5 years ago, 10 years ago. What you were saying, and also Bruce, what earlier you mentioned, like are you making the decisions? And that was something for me personally where like I said, like we have success and you have these systems that we're trying to like get ourselves accustomed to. And for a while I kind of lost myself, like, because I'm trying to win this thing, and I'm like, man, like this isn't, because like about we talk about making money. I made money, and then like I lost money too, and then it got me really thinking, like, like, am I this good person or am I this bad person? We talk about like our relationships with our family, like our wife, our kids, and it just last weekend we went out with like family time. Like I took the boys and took my wife out. We went out to go watch a movie, and it was all good. And then coming home, it's just like just coming home. One thing led to another, and like it just went really bad. And then, like, and I came home, and it was just like, man, this wasn't how I wanted family time to be. It was bad. And then, like, and then I had a conversation with my wife, and, we talked about like, hey, like, what is it that you want the relationship to be, and what do you want them to be when they grow up? And it got me really thinking, where I like, oh, shoot, I gotta be accountable. Like, I was wrong. The words that I used, the way how I said it. So, like I went and I apologized, to my kids. Like, hey, I messed up. So just going back to like where I think, I forget someone said reflection and growth. Man, that I was like, that was what I just did. Now I'm like, whoa. I knew, you just try to go along, but like I thought about it, you because sometimes when you always think about it, you're like, oh, like, oh man, it was him, it was her, it wasn't me. So so I love it.
No, it's funny because that's the next question that I kind of wanted to present to the panel is, how do you, in your case, you were able to quickly recognize, and sometimes in the moment, this is why when I do like Wednesday words and stuff, I'm like, hey, yo, I like got a cheat sheet of notes that I got the opportunity to think about over time while not in a stress situation. But that doesn't mean that I'm always going to get that right. Like, it doesn't mean that in my day-to-day life that I'm just like, okay, check 1, check 2, check 3. Great, I got that right. Next obstacle. No, it doesn't mean that. There are times where we are going to get it wrong, but that accountability aspect to be able to go back and have those conversations, go back and apologize, which I'll be honest, is something I struggle to do because 90% of the time, if I said it, I meant it. I may not have said it right, but I meant it in some regard.
Billy, that is perfect, because when I tell my kids, when I have to go back and apologize, I'm big on apology. That's easy for me, and I'm not. That's just me. But I'll never apologize for the message because I meant what I said. I'm apologizing for the delivery of said message because I get that wrong a lot. I get the tone, the inflection of my voice. Sometimes I use choice words, but the message, oh no, I'm not apologizing for that.
Yeah, and that's difficult because like I grew up in a space where if you had to apologize for what you said, then what you said was wrong. And that's not necessarily the case. Of what you said could have been right. It just wasn't articulated in the correct manner. The delivery system wasn't right. Look, if I want to tell you I love you and I'm hurt and I'm afraid for our relationship because it's been rocky lately, I don't send that message on the tip of a nuclear missile because that's going to completely decimate the relationship. But if I want to send that message, maybe I send that message as a love note. Hey, babe, I'm worried about us. I do want you to know I love you, but here's some of the concerns that I have. When you're ready, let's talk about that. Completely the same message, the same exact message, but it's not atomic. And that is what differentiates the messaging. So
I wouldn't send that in a text because they might be... but I get you.
Yeah. So that would be my next question is really, how do you manage those feelings and thoughts of being inadequate when it comes to success? Because I'm like you, John, like I take things to heart, like especially when I get things wrong and I know how I feel about the person, I take it to heart that damn, I just kind of ruined the night for everybody. And that wasn't, like you said, that wasn't the way I seen this playing out of my mind. I seen happy family, everybody enjoyed each other's time and company, and we're like, great to be a part of this family. And now we're at this place where it's like, yo, can I get like a hall pass to get up out of the family for like a couple of days? Because this family is not what I want it to be right now. How do you manage those feelings and those thoughts of inadequate success?
Y'all know I'll go. I just be talking. I'll go. Okay, I'll go. As of late, what I've been trying to do, and this is what I tell myself, my little mantra in the morning is I need to take the emotion out of the delivery when I'm feeling hurt or inadequate about something. Because I mean, for real, my problem is I wrap my success around the validation from my family, right? Like, do my kids think I'm a good dad, right? Does my wife think I'm a good husband? You know what I mean? And sometimes that's not fair. That's not fair for her. And she says it all the time. She says, Bruce, how am I supposed to tell you what I need from you when you're always working on yourself? Like, it's a toxic trait. Like, I'm always trying to find a way to improve me to the point where it's not fair for my wife and kids because it's unrealistic, right? Like and I like what Tim said earlier, making sure the goals aren't too lofty. I struggle with that. I'm like, let's shoot for the moon, and wherever we land, at least we're outer space. I'm good, right? So I don't know how I deal with it, Billy. I call you. That's what I do. I call Billy. What do you guys do?
Answers in that. For one, I would say I like to, the word of the day, reflect on why I didn't achieve. Right? Was it like Glenn said it earlier? Was my focus off? Was I focused in the wrong direction, or was the goal not really achievable in the first place? Did I set myself up for my own self up for this failure and this feeling? Like, for instance, if I said, hey, my goal is by this time next month, I want to dunk a basketball. And I went and I trained for a month, and then the month came and I was grabbing the net, maybe. was that even realistic in the first place on 42-year-old knees and ankles? And you know what I mean? Like LeBron's laying it up more lately. Is it really realistic? So you gotta look back on, were you misguided? Was your effort there? And you gotta be honest with yourself. So a lot of it is reflect and be honest with yourself, and then kind of reverse engineer what went wrong, because that could help you achieve the success that you were inadequate in achieving this time. You could look at it and say, oh, wow, because not inadequate success and the feelings behind it are always like sad feelings. Sometimes they're very educational feelings, like, oh, man, okay, now when this happens, I'm going to look back in this direction, because if I would have did it this time, I would have found success faster. You used the analogy earlier, Bruce, about your wife, right? And the list the same as it was 6 months ago when you asked the last time. So, for instance, an example of that would be, you ask your wife, how could I improve our relationship? And she says, you can help out more. And so in your mind, you're like, okay, let me step up. I'll clean up after myself. I'm doing this and doing that. And then she tells you 6 months later, yeah, you can still help me out a lot. You're in your head, you're thinking, man, I made effort here. What are you talking about? And then you ask her the follow-up question, how can I help out around here? And then she starts telling you about, laundry, whatever the people do in their household, laundry, dishes, and you're like, oh, so all this time you've been making effort in the wrong place that really isn't having the impact with her. So now so now your effort could go in those areas, and now next time you ask her, the success will be hit. So that's like a version of it. Not all of it is always negative. You always, what I like to do is I like to find what's the lesson learned in this. Was my heart in the right place? Was my mind in the right place? Was my focus in the right place? And figure out where the no is in there, and then focus on that. Or if it was the goal a little bit too rich for my blood? Was it a little bit too unrealistic? Was I asking myself to cut more things than was realistic and reasonable? Weight for me has always been like a fluctuation. And part of that is I could go gung-ho, but it's never in an aspect where it's a long-term realistic goal to live that way. I could go gung-ho for a while, and then what happens? You reach your goal, you arrive at your destination, unfortunately, and then let the suitcases stay packed for a while. And then all of a sudden, he's looking, oh man, I look the same way I did a year ago. I was just looking so great. So it's a lot of it is, what's the lesson learned? Where was the focus? Was it achievable? Was it not? And really doing a deep dive on that. And then taking the lesson learned for the next time and learning to let go, man. That has been something I've been really good about, or getting better at, I should say, the last 2 or 3 years, is the letting go. Just because you don't check all the boxes, like you said, Billy, doesn't mean the day was a failure.
Right.
Sometimes, like to this day, I'll have like a list of things I want to get done for the day, work-wise. And I'm like, man, let me just stay just a little bit longer and finish it. But I've been getting better at, you know what? It'll be there tomorrow. Let me go ahead and punt that till tomorrow. It's not the end of the world if I don't get that all done tonight. So learning how to manage yourself and learning who you are, that's big in this.
Yeah, I love the recalibration aspect, especially Glenn. You brought that in as well. The recalibration in the shooting range. I love going to the shooting range. So anytime you say shooting range, I'm like, yeah, pow pow. But that recalibration aspect is important, because sometimes before you even get to the failure or the feelings of inadequacy, you can see, hey, yo, I'm not gonna. If I wanted to lose 50 pounds in the next 4 days, I'm gonna know on day 1, but definitely by day 2, I still got 45 pounds to go. This ain't gonna happen. Like, step back and recalibrate yourself to a more realistic goal is important. It's funny because Tim and I play video games together, and this year I've been trying to play video games less because my wife wants quality time, because that's her love language. And it was funny because the agreement that I made, which I need to go back and renegotiate this agreement, but the agreement that I made was to not play games Monday through Friday or Monday through Thursday or something like that. And for the most part, I've been okay with it, but there's been some weeks where it's like, yo, I'm stressed and I just want to play the game to relax and decompress. And I didn't realize that I need the game, not in the sense of an addiction, but in the sense of like a release. Or if I mean, I could go fishing, I could go to the shooting range. Those things are just more expensive, so I choose to play video games because they're cheaper. But I didn't realize that I need that, and because I need that, I need to recommunicate that negotiation that I made with my wife to a space that I can actually be successful in. Because I'm also big on being a man of my word, and it disrupts me and probably creates even more frustration when I'm playing the game, feel guilty, and then I come to the room and maybe she's just tired and wants to lay down, and I'm like, oh, she's mad at me because I played the game. And so it creates this conflict that's really taking place in me only, but it feels like we're both experiencing it. So that recalibration aspect is something that I think helps us feel like we're successful, because success is very incremental. It's not something that one day you're unsuccessful and the next day you're not. One, my business mentor, the one who's currently incarcerated, unfortunately, that was one of the things he would say is, hey, look, I became successful overnight. It just wasn't last night. It was over many, many nights that I put in the work, was due diligent, and did what I needed to do, to where now you're seeing this overnight success, but that came as an incremental progress. It was not this one and done situation. I think you had came off of mute, Glenn.
Yeah, I wanted to tap into something that you and Tim said. Ro, you had mentioned about realistic goals, and Tim, you were kind of talking about, learning how to slam dunk in 30 days. And I wanted to comment on that, because I think oftentimes we use the realistic goal word as an excuse, right? And so, and this is really kind of me maybe driving my point about effort, because if my goal is to slam dunk a ball in 30 days, when I go to measure that I accomplished that or not, or accomplished that a success or not, it should not only be measured on did I actually dunk the ball, right? Because if I've constantly put in effort every single day for 30 days and I look back 30 days from now, in most cases, you'll see a huge shift, right? And so tying that into back to what you guys are saying as far as those realistic goals, yes, slam dunking a ball at 42 may not be, I may not hit that target, but like I should not downplay the ultimate goal just because of the lack of effort, right? And I think that society has us, our minds wrapped up in like, oh, we'll just set realistic goals, but there's a gap between reaching for the stars and still setting that realistic goals and you landing in the middle, right? I think one of the problems is that when we say we want to try to give 100% effort, our 100% is only really 80%, because if we really dig deep down, we have another 20% to give if it came down to it, if it came down to a life or death situation. And I think that when we write down our goals or when we try to measure success, we don't look at it the same. We don't look at it that if my back was against the wall and I needed to put all my chips on the table, will I give it all? Would I put it all in? And so, that's just kind of something that I kind of remind myself, like, if you're going to do something, if you're going to commit to something, like do it and go all in. Like here, I was late to this. I thought I was showing up 5 minutes early, to kind of small talk with the team. And we're 27 minutes in and I'm like, was the effort there, right? Like, was I intentional with my schedule? Anyway, I'm kind of going off another point, but I want to circle that back to the question. I think that for me, when it comes to managing your feelings and thoughts, it requires practice, and in a sense of like practicing to get better, right? If I understand how I manage my feelings and how I manage my thoughts, it requires me to do self-reflection. It requires me to maybe meditate, be more mindful, so that when it comes to success or me striving for something, I can measure it properly. because I understand how I feel, why I feel a certain way, why I receive certain thoughts based off of certain things. So I just wanted to kind of, full circle, just kind of tie that back into the effort piece and the practice. For me, it's important to manage or practice managing my feelings and my thoughts, right? And that requires me having to put in that effort, whether it is just me thinking about my thoughts and feelings, and or whether it's me trying to at 41 dunk a ball and I'm only 5'7", right? But I should be able to measure in between and still not be in the same place I was day one that I was in day 30. So
I love what you said there, Glenn, and it resonates for me because in my personal pursuit, and my brothers tell me this, Billy, you've told me this before, my wife has told me this, in my own personal pursuit for this growth of success, the shortcomings, the failures that I do have, I get reminded by other people that they see the effort, right? And sometimes I'll speak for me. Sometimes I get lost in the weeds and focus on the gold, and I don't even notice that, damn, no, I didn't dunk the ball, but bro, I'm slapping the backboard every time I throw that layup. I'm him now, 30 days ago, I wasn't him. Now I'm Timothy Johnson. And I would suggest for everyone to just take a little bit more time and recognizing the accomplishment. Like, if the goal was too lofty, you can readjust the goal. But no matter what, if you're working towards something, if, like you said, if you're giving that effort, you should praise yourself for that. There's no fail in that. There's no fail in trying, right? There's no fail in giving genuine effort. And then what's a realistic goal to one person might not be a realistic goal to someone else. And that's why you'll notice that when you fail at something, someone's like, well, damn, you did a great job. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And you're thinking to yourself, nah, but I really didn't. Like, that's another comparative way to measure success, I guess I would say too. Just the effort you give says a lot about, your own personal success or the journey on it, I would say. Great point, Glenn.
Tim, you're unmuted. Did you have something you wanted to add?
Forgot to put it on me.
Oh, John, what you got?
I just want to say all these nuggets, points. I love it. It's you shoot for the moon. This is something that where I'm actually, to be really honest, I have a lot of difficulty with, like managing my feelings and my thoughts, and especially like when you shoot for the moon, if you don't get it, like it's hard for me to I know when the last discussion we had, we said, oh, like we're not enough, but like it's like, are we enough? But even for me, I say to myself, man, like maybe I just don't have it. Maybe I just don't have it what it takes to get it done. But it's like I had done some reflection, and like I have, at least for me, where I say, okay, yeah, I have done something. But it's for me, I would say along the same lines what Bruce was saying, celebrate yourself. Realize where you're at, what you have done, because it's easy. Like don't just trip over just a pebble. Like because sometimes for me, I get hung up on that. I'm like, oh man, like why did I trip? And then instead of just like, hey, John, you already took like 100 steps already. Like, your work about tripping over this. So that's something with me that I'm learning to, and like how I Billy, maybe it was you where you're like, I'm just battling it in my head. Like it's not even like I'm thinking that, oh, my wife said this, my kid, my whatever who said this, but it was just my head, me being myself up.
Yeah, I think what you're touching on, and this is a part of that measurement, is acceptance. Being able to accept and move forward. A lot of times it's that battle of not being willing to accept the fact that, hey, like, here's one of the things I used to do when I was a kid and still do sometimes as an adult. I'm like, yo, you're Billy Rowe. Figure that out. Like because I'm Billy Rowe, that apparently is the motivation to figure all things out to life. That's like when I was a kid, oh man, you're Billy Rowe. You're tired. I remember when you came back from the army, you and Chuck came back from the army, Tim, and we'd be out there jogging, and it'd be 1, 2, 3, full, hey. And there'd be times where I'd be just beat and exhausted. But to Glenn's point, I knew I still had more in the tank. And so I just focused on that count 1, 2, 3, 4. And for me, that was just me breathing. As long as I was saying those numbers, I was getting enough oxygen to take the next step and to take the next step. But when I was done, I was done. And that's that acceptance part of, hey, I've given it everything that I've got, that I got. And even if I didn't give it everything that I got, I'm not willing to give it anymore. And that's so critical, because when you talk about, Glenn, you say, that participation trophy mentality. Okay, well, I showed up. That's what I feel like a lot of this generation is about when it comes to the workforce nowadays. Well, I showed up, so you should pay me, but you were on your cell phone and you didn't do anything. So why should I pay you for doing nothing? But if you showed up and you gave it everything that you had and that wasn't enough, that's something I can live with. Or if I showed up and I gave it everything that I wanted to give to it, I can live with that. What I can't live with, and I think, John, why I get tripped up in my head, is I got to make sure that my step away point is my step away point. I remember we had a family living with us when I lived in California. And this is back, Bruce, when we were doing the mastermind. And I remember at that mastermind, Sean had shared, only give what you want to give. Only give what you want to give. Anything that you give beyond what you want to give is not helping anybody. It's not helping them, and it's not helping you. It's actually building animosity and resentment. And I remember these people were living with me. They were supposed to be there, I think, a month. And they were supposed to help out financially because there was a family of 5 living in our house all of a sudden. And they didn't. And I remember not being frustrated about that, because it was like, I wanted to give them help and assistance because they're in a space of need. I also wanted to show my children what it looks like when you have resources and how you can help people with those resources within reason. But then I remember there came a time where they needed an additional week or something like that, like an additional week to stay with us because their new place wasn't ready. And I said, yeah, you're welcome to stay one additional week. But then that would be as far as I'd be willing to extend it. Because for me, though I had unlimited to give, as far as you can stay with me until we move out of this house and sell it. Like, technically, it's unlimited until I sell it. I knew that's not what I wanted to give. And being able to accept that when we got to the end of that week extension and it was like, oh, I need another 3 days, I simply said, I'm not willing to give that. I'm not willing to give that. I've given everything that I am willing to give. And now we are at the place where I need you to leave my residence because now I'm not in a space of willingness to give. And I think about that experience in regards to measuring success when I missed the mark. And being able to say, regardless if I have more in the tank or not, regardless of how close I am to success, because that's sometimes how we dangle the carrot in front of us to get us past the finish line. Oh, just 10 more steps. And then you get 10 steps, just 10 more steps. And by the time you know it, you're 10 more steps into a 50th time of 10 more steps. But that's how I've learned to manage those feelings and say, hey, were you in a space where you wanted to give any more to that? Were you in a space where you were willing to do that work? I remember when I was married, before I was married now, in my previous relationship, somebody had asked me, are you still in love? And I said, well, I have to assume I am still in love because I'm still willing to do the work. And the moment that I was not willing to do the work, doesn't matter how much love I say I have for this person, doesn't matter what actions at that point that I try to convey that I love that person, I'm not willing to do the work. And so I can't effectively love somebody that I'm not willing to put the work into. And so being able to, for me, to be able to manage those thoughts of inadequacy on success, those thoughts of inadequacies as a father, inadequacies as a husband, inadequacies as an employee, as a person, as a friend, whatever it may be, it comes down to that acceptance concept, John, being able to say, hey, look, there was a rock there. I tripped over it. I could either stop the journey here, or do I have enough strength to mend my foot and then get back on the road? And that sometimes it can happen faster than other times. Sometimes it's hard. If your credit takes a hit, that's a longer journey than your bank account being negative for one paycheck. And so for me, that's how I've learned to manage those thoughts and those feelings of inadequacy regarding success, is really just learning to accept where I am. Not necessarily, and it could be, I guess, perceived as accepting defeat. And if that's how you perceive it that way. But for me, it's accepting the work and the effort that I'm willing to put into it. Because if you're not willing to put work and effort into success, you're probably not going to luck out and obtain it, in my experience. So that's what I got there. Anybody else have anything else to add? All right. So then we'll move on to this last portion of this before we begin to close out. I put here, what drives you towards success? We kind of taken this journey, our introduction to success, what this topic means, how we measure success today. And I think this is really a good segue to the aspect of that acceptance and what effort you're willing to put into it. But what have you learned over your lifespan that really is the motivating factor for success for you? Anybody can jump in.
Go ahead, Bruce.
I think that was John. Go ahead, John.
Okay, yeah. Thanks, Tim. For me, I would say, I think someone mentioned it earlier. I believe that was you, Tim. You mentioned growth. I would say that's for me. Like that's something where I'm always. If I don't grow, then I just don't feel like there's there's always that question, what's the purpose? What's the point? Why am I here? Like there's no value. But for me, like what drives me is for that growth component. It don't necessarily have to be me. Like if I see others growing, that I'm helping them, that's motivates me. If it's with me, then that's great as well too. But so for me, it's just growth. I just want to see people living better than what they're doing before, where they've been. So that's one of I would say the main motivation for me.
I'll be kind of brief with this one. Just a realization for me that there's some things that are not destinations, and it's funny, the things that we all want aren't meant to be you achieve them and now you have it forever. For instance, like love, respect, trust, happiness. The funny thing about those is they all got to be maintained. There's no, I got that, I'm equal happy forever. That's not how that works. Or I'm respected forever. You could lose all those in an instant, and they take forever to build in both those areas, or all those areas. For me, simply put, what drives me is I know I'll be better. And better than I was yesterday is better than staying the same or getting worse. So it's pretty simple. And then when you look at it, if you're not moving towards those things are staying still. So if you're not moving towards them, they're moving further away from you. And I start thinking about that, and I start thinking about like how a lot of people die within like their first 7-8 years of retirement. And it's like, whoa, why are these people dying once they retire? And it's because in their mind they hit a finish line and they're losing purpose. And to me, to maintain the purpose is what drives me, and to continue to be better than I was yesterday. And I got a long way to go in some areas. I realized in some of my most recent reflections that I got to start prioritizing myself a little bit better. And I'm not a spring chicken anymore. I can't snap my fingers and recommit to something and then get back to a state where I'm comfortable and then play that roller coaster anymore. So I got to really game plan on how I'm going to do that and really start attacking that for a more long-term success. But be better than yesterday is really what drives me, because if you don't, that's when, in my opinion, you really start to die. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's a great answer, Tim. I like that a lot. I like that answer a lot. I think what drives me towards success, especially now that my kids are of an age to where it's not that the parenting stops, it's that the parenting evolves, right? What they needed from me and what I thought was going to make me successful isn't what they need anymore. They need me in a whole different way because they're now young adults living their young lives, right? So I think for me, the thing that continues to drive me towards success is wanting to become the person that I see myself as, right? Like, and I get glimpses of it when the brothers who know me reflect, oh, Bruce, your childhood, the shit you've been through and everything you've done and the person you turned out to, man, that's awesome. You're great. That should be a book or whatever. Like, I don't even recognize that I lived through what I lived through and I am who I am now. Like, I don't see it like everyone else sees it, right? And that comes back to what Tim said and what you also said, John, being hard on ourselves, right? Like not acknowledging ourselves for who we are, not as the dad or the project manager or whatever it is that I do that's outside of just being Bruce, right? So the thing that continues to drive me towards success is knowing that I have the ability to do the things that I've set out to do. I set out to be a good father. We did that, still striving to be a good husband, still working on that. Management, all the things that I've done in my personal life. Now I just want to be good enough for Bruce. And I think the want to validate myself is what is like the burning desire right now for me to continue to strive towards success.
Yeah, I think both what you're saying, Bruce, and what Tim just said, as far as these targets for success are not stationary targets. They're constantly in flux and on the move. And part of that, in my experience of what drives me towards success, has been being able to stay ahead of those things. I've moved to a space in my life where chasing happiness is not a position I want to be in. I don't want to be behind happiness trying to catch up to it and having to accelerate at times because happiness is moving faster than I am. I have tried to become more disciplined about, okay, I'm happy, but I'm going to keep running like I'm chasing happiness, if that makes sense. Because if I'm keep running like I'm chasing happiness, then I'm going to be ahead of happiness. And it's going to take a hell of a long time for happiness to outpace me. That's how I've continued to drive towards success. And I even look at that even in like the financial aspect of real estate. I remember my wife and I were having a conversation, and this is right before we started buying houses, but it was like, so what's your retirement plan? I was like, well, I don't have a pension. My goal is 5 to 10 houses and live off of the passive income of the houses. That's my goal. And I look at how I got one house, and then I got another house, and then I sold a house, and then Bruce, we're closing escrow on another house this Thursday. So it's like I'm going to outrun that rather than just chase it and hope to catch up to it someday. I'm gonna be like, yo, if I can get the next 10 houses in 5 years, 2 houses a year, that's a win for me. I don't foresee that being the case, but if it happens, it happens, and I'm willing to pursue that vigorously. But I think it also comes down to understanding, like you said, Tim, what is my current situation and not damaging these goals that I have in place and the success that I'm trying to achieve by overclocking myself with stress or overclocking my heart with bad foods because I'm so caught up on getting real estate that I'm not eating healthy. So what good is that if you do all these things to achieve something only to die because you didn't take care of what mattered the most? That's really what drives me towards success. I am also very driven by, and this is going to sound interesting, by external input from people that I love and trust. I don't care about the world. Like, you can think whatever you want to think about me. I'm me. You're just gonna have to live with that because I don't know you enough to change. However, with my wife, somebody who's very close to me, she always says, you know, you snap at me sometimes in situations that you wouldn't snap at other people. And it is because number one, she's the person that I spend the most time with. So like you said in the beginning of the conversation, Bruce, you get to see every aspect of me because you're around 24/7. But the other part of that is I truly do hold her opinion of me at such a high level that when I feel like the opinion that she has of me is out of alignment with who I believe me to be, it hurts more. Like, Joe Bob on the street can be like, bro, I think your breath stinks. And I was like, I think you should just stay far enough away from me so you don't have to smell my breath and we won't have any problems. Now, my wife, I lay in the bed with her face to face. So she says, yo, your breath stinks. I'm like, dang, well, I'll just roll over to the other side because now I'm emotional and want to just be fine. I won't breathe on you then. I'll suffocate. So it's like for me, what drives me towards success is really staying ahead of where I want to be. But then that other aspect is the people who accepting the people who are close to me that I love and I care about. Their feedback means a lot to me, and being okay with the fact that their feedback means a lot to me. Don't get me wrong. At the end of the day, I'm okay with rolling solo dolo if I had to. 100% okay with that. Why? Because I like me. I don't not like me. But at the same time, I do value and appreciate the circle of individuals that I have around me. And because of that, that continues to drive me towards success, because when there are these comparisons taking place, or there are these perceptions taking place on who I am as the friend, as the uncle, as the brother, as the homie, or whatever it may be, who I am as that person, that leadership and that modelship matters to me. And that also continues to drive my success. It puts me in a space where it's like, yo, you're going to make some mistakes, but it's important that you make the right decisions, because there's some people who are looking at you that you really care about, and you don't want for them to be disappointed. People can be disappointed for a host of reasons, but you don't want them to feel like they were fraudulently led astray. That's where it drives me towards success.
I'm sorry, guys. I got to jump in on that one. And John, I feel like we suffer from similar things. And Billy, you just said something that's so important. And that I myself, and John, I don't know if you agree with this, but I know I need to work on this. I don't keep yes men in my circle. I don't. And so it's weird for me, because I'll call Billy and Billy will be like, nah, Bruce, you effed up. You were wrong, right? And I can take that information, process it, and grow from it, right? But what I struggle with is the people whose opinion I value. Bruce, you did this really amazingly. Oh, yeah, man, whatever. Come on, man. Let's talk about something else. I have a problem taking the good from the people opinions that I value, and actually processing, analyzing that, and growing from that too. And I feel like if you have people in your life that you value what they say, they love you, you love them, and you're already willing to work on your inadequacies, because we already think about what we do wrong, we want to work on it anyway. Also, just make sure that the people in your life that are pumping that good into you, spreading that love, shining that light on you, absorb that light too. I just feel like that's super important, because I don't do it nearly enough.
You're so right, Bruce. I definitely, that's something that I need to work on too, because I'll have some folks where they say, hey, John, I'm trying to get where you're at, and I'm like, where am I at? I don't think I'm anywhere. So like for me, I need to recognize that first they're complimenting me, and like this is from people that I love and that loves me too. So so now I just need to be more mindful of that. Definitely appreciate that.
I love that, John. They're trying to be like me. Who are you trying to be like?
He said, "Where am I at?" I fell out. That's funny.
Right? Who you trying to be like? Like me? Nah, I don't know. Don't be like me. Be like Mike. Don't be like me. Glenn, did you have anything you want to add before we get ready to wrap?
Yeah, what drives me towards success? Mine's is really simple. Um, I have the mindset of like the work's not done yet. While I've come very, very far from where I started, like I still have a long way to go, right? So when I, talk about, the areas of being a father, there's still a lot of sharpening on that saw I need to do, as a husband, as an individual, just all the way around. And so, for me, I really want to be that example to my family and to my kids so that they can carry on something new that's not, that hasn't been taught to the Davis last name, right? And so then now they're just kind of carrying that torch. And so, like I said, I just wake up and just, there's still a lot of work to be done. And so while I do something that someone said on here, which I appreciate, because I feel like sometimes when you're chasing something, you get so wrapped up in chasing it and not celebrating the small wins. And so um, I've gotten better at that throughout the last couple seasons of like not just running, but taking a moment to take a knee, and get back to where I need to get back to keep driving towards that success. But yeah, so mine's is simple.
I love it. I'm over here toggling between mutes on my mic and mutes on my software, but I love that. It continue. It's like a continual push versus just when I was an IT recruiter, I had asked for some feedback from one of my managers when they were doing layoffs, and he was like, I would just recommend that you don't lax on your laurels, like just sitting back and waiting for somebody else to pull the rope tight. Be active in your pursuits. I think a lot of times when it comes to success, a lot of us want success to chase us down. But it's really difficult for success um, to chase us down when we ain't doing nothing. I want to say when we ain't doing shit. Like that's the reality. How you want something to chase you down, you ain't doing anything. That'd be like me wanting my wife to pursue me, but we've never met. Want her to say I do and meet me at the altar in her white dress. Shout out to Jagged Edge. But I ain't never met her, had a conversation.
Billy, what always gets me, prayers, but no work. You do all the praying, but none of the work.
Yeah. I think with the things, the universal thing that seems to drive many men to success, is really a matter of our own self-perception. It is how we perceive who we are, whether that's in comparison to others, whether that's in comparison to the ideal person that we think we have the potential to achieving to be, a host of other different things. But really, it is that pursuit of our own self-perception. Because if you feel like you're slacking and you can do better, you typically will do better. If you feel like you're doing your absolute best and there's nothing else you can give, you're probably not going to give anything else. If you feel like, oh, I'm so far ahead, the tortoise and the hare mentality, I'm so far ahead, can't nothing pass me up, you take your foot off the gas and you'll start coasting. And then that thing that you thought you were so far ahead of will simply pass you by while you napping, while you sleeping. I think the overall space for this conversation on measuring success really comes down to it comes down to knowing what it is, knowing who it is that you want to be. And I put this in 3 different categories: who you want to be in the present, who you want to be in the future, and who you were in the past. I put the past last in this particular case because I believe that is the baseline for measuring evolution and measuring growth. Like a couple of you have said, is, you look at the list and you see nothing's changed in 5 years. I can look at the list in the last 5 years. I could look in the list in the last 15 years and tell you there has been a significant level of growth in who I am as a person, who I am as a man, who I am as an individual, who I am as a father, who I am as a husband. There has been a significant amount of growth. And this is the one thing that I love about Facebook, because I don't post on there as much anymore. But when it shoots you those memories and you can see 8 years ago, you wasn't talking about nothing. You was talking about had a sandwich at Subway. That's what you was talking about. And to see like the complexity of my thoughts evolve over time, from doing things like Confessions of a Married Man. I got to get back to that series. I really love that series. Doing things like Confessions of a Married Man, to doing Thoughts of the Day, to doing Wednesday Words, to creating different show concepts and creating communities for men to interact in and people to interact in. There's definitely been a level of growth there for me. And the only way I'm capable of measuring that and continuing to reinforce and encourage myself is by being able to see, as I move through the present and as I look towards the future, the past from which I came. So that's my closing thought. I'm going to open it up to everybody to give their closing thoughts. Then, of course, I always got some takeaways that I want to share with the community before we get out.
First, because I have some things that are in my head. I don't want to leave them I don't want to have them be fleeting thoughts. One, it's really interesting when you look at what I would classify as a high value person. High value people are usually harder on themselves. Low value people usually are not. So the fact that you are on top of your own self and being really, in some cases, probably hypercritical of yourself is usually a sign of the quality of the person you are. So you probably need to give yourself a little slack. The second thing is, when you start like with goals and success, you start really, when you get into achieving goals and things of that nature, you'll start noticing that you'll start asking yourself some really interesting questions like, I achieved that goal, but did I achieve it the right way? Is it maintainable? Did I, how was it achieved? And then you'll start asking yourself the question like, why was it even a goal in the first place? Who was that for? Why was that for? And then you'll learn sometimes more in that than the journey and the goal itself, of what actually drives you subconsciously into the root of it all. So this has been, again, another great conversation. And I really appreciate getting the insight from each and every one of you, and the vulnerability of everybody, everybody on this call, especially highlighting Bruce and John, and saying, hey, like, John, what do you want to beat me for? Well, yeah, because the problem is high quality people usually don't tend to recognize that in themselves, but others recognize it in you. They're like, man, you're a good dude. I want to be like you. And you're like, what? Because you don't know anything else. You don't know to not be a high quality person. It's always been in you. You're just now starting to realize it a little bit. So those are my closing thoughts. Another great conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Thanks, Billy. This has been very therapeutic. I learned a lot. I mean, a ton. So I'm definitely, again, I'm going to use this in my personal growth, my professional growth. So I'll keep it up. Keep it up.
I wrote it down because I get scatterbrained, and I have to start with compare the past. Billy, that is so crazy. I've been writing in my journal, writing in my little notebooks. I got like 3 of them. And I didn't even think about how Facebook is. Boy, listen, if you knew me on Facebook 10 years ago, wow, bro. Like, I'm literally going to go back and just look through the memories. I was lousy. I mean, lousy. But it feels good to say that, because that means from who I was then to who I am now, and the trajectory, like if you're watching the charts, the trajectory is fantastic. So compare the past, be okay with who you were, be even more intentional about who you want to be. I'm speaking for myself. These are the things that I want to do. I have to continue to be intentional about who I want to be, but also live in the present, right? I have to become better I feel like I feel like I'm a winner in terms of my success is based on me. Like I have people that I look up to that I'm like, man, damn, he's doing good. She's doing good. But that doesn't move me. Your success doesn't move me. The only success that moves me is Bruce's success, right? And then I think the final thought for me would be, have a plan, man, and work the plan and just keep going, right? It's not a participation trophy situation to acknowledge that you are going to keep going on your journey, right? And some days aren't good. Some days are better than others. One day I take 10 steps. The next day I might only take 2. But the point is you get to the finish line by keep on taking them steps. So I would just say for me, in order to be successful, I just got to keep going.
Yeah, I love that. Really quick on the work the plan part. I think this comes to, again, the shooting range, being able to recalibrate. Sometimes we think work the plan means don't move away from the plan. The plan is the plan. You got to stick with the plan. Plan can't change because we already made the plan. Nah, man. Sometimes working the plan is revamping the plan. Hey, that didn't work how I thought it was going to work. Let me take a moment to reflect on some of the things that, as Tim said, reverse engineer this plan a little bit to find out why that didn't work that way and see how I can improve upon the plan. So that's another aspect of working the plan that I think sometimes we either miss or take for granted. I don't know how to say that, but we forget to revamp the plan as necessary.
I feel like we forget that success is not linear, right? Not for people who aren't handed things. Unless you are handed the company from parents, unless you're handed the trust fund, success for most hardworking people is not a straight linear. There's ups, there's downs, there's ebbs, there's flows. And success is such a broad term that there can't just be one plan. There can't be that, or else everybody would be successful because we would know the one plan to do and we would work it, right?
Right. Go ahead.
That's hilarious. Real quick, if you think checking your Facebook memories is funny, why don't you go log back into your MySpace? That'll really blow your mind. Second thing is you mentioned, Billy. I love how you left the past as the last thing that you mentioned, because when you really think about it, your here and now shapes both your past and your future, because your past is constantly being left behind like a trail, and you start leaving a positive trail, that past starts looking real positive. And then again, that's going to affect where you're driving towards. So it's interesting the power of now really is, because it could change what's already happened and what's yet to happen. So nice little nugget to blow my mind on before you end the show. That was pretty good.
There we go. Always something. Glenn, what you got?
Hey, Billy, first and foremost, man, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate the platform. And I appreciate you guys as well. I definitely took some notes away. I would end up with saying this. This is kind of a message to myself, and I just kind of say it publicly. Like we talked about success. So the reminder to myself is in my journey of striving for that, don't lose yourself in the process. And to that, to be true to yourself means to be true to your greatest potential. And it means fulfilling all of your God-given capacities for doing good work and achieving great things. And so that's success, as someone mentioned earlier, man. It's a journey. It's not a destination, right? And I'll just say, success is not something that you do; it's something that you become. I appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you, brother. I appreciate all you for being here this evening. Right before we close, I want to share some of the key takeaways and these are just my key takeaways. Y'all might have your own key takeaways, but these are the key takeaways that I'm taking from tonight's talk. The first one that I put was from Bruce. It said, goals, means, and actions, the measurements of success. It's measured by our goals. It's measured by the means in which we have to achieve said goals and the actions that we take in order to achieve said goals. I think that that's wonderful. I just lost my studio light. Apparently I should have plugged it up. That's on me. But I think that that is a wonderful approach to successful measuring success. My takeaway number 2 that I had is success requires regular nourishment. That was what you had said, Tim, going back to that smelling the flowers, and being in the garden. I think that was pivotal for me because earlier in life, I would always be that person who was like, okay, cool, I obtained it next. I obtained it next. I obtained it next. And then you wonder why there's no foundation being built. Well, it's because everything's disposable, including the success that you just obtained and decided to no longer nurture. So the fact that success requires regular nourishment, it's not something that you're going to hit, like you said, in many things in life. You're not going to achieve them and that be it. Okay, I hit success, coast and autopilot from here on out. No. You're gonna still have to do some work. So that was takeaway number 2. Takeaway number 3 that I have here is that success is incremental. Be less critical. Really, it's not a one and done. It's just not. And so not in the sense of I achieved it and now I'm done, but it's not like I decided I'm going to dunk the ball in 30 days and on day 1 I dunk the ball and I'm done. No, there's some work that I'm going to have to do over that 30-day period to get to the space to where I can even be in the realm of touching the rim, let alone dunking the ball. So for me, that success is incremental is really important, but be less critical about the fact that you may have missed it for a day. And it reminds me of the conversation I was having with my son today about schoolwork. I said, you missed an assignment. You had a plan to get this done by the 12th of April, and you missed an assignment on the 5th of April. And that wasn't a big deal on the 6th of April. But now here we're on the 11th of April, and that assignment still isn't done. And neither is the one that was due on the 6th, and neither is the one that's due on the 7th. And you still want to try to be done by the 12th of April. It's incremental. So it's not that in the big scheme of things, that missing that assignment or missing that step that you thought you were going to achieve that day isn't a big thing, but you still have to have the drive to continue to push yourself forward. So be less critical and keep it moving. John, you had this, and this kind of drove as well with takeaway 3, but accept where you are and move forward. Like that acceptance component that you shared today was super helpful for me because I get caught up in the weeds often. The fact that I didn't do, the fact that I could have done, the fact that I should have done. And then again, you get into these imaginary conflict conversations within yourself. And by the time you look up, you spent a whole day doing nothing besides reliving a moment that hasn't even existed. So that accept where you are and move forward. I also apply that to Glenn, what you were saying as far as, that work and that effort. Hey, ain't nobody, at least in this house, ain't nobody being celebrated over a participation trophy in this house. But accept where you're at. And if you did your 100% best, I don't care if you got a D. If it was your 100% best, I'm going to accept where you were at. We're going to move forward from that. How can we possibly improve? How can we create some efficiencies versus spending time saying, man, I got that D. No, you did your best. There's nothing you can do to improve your best other than create efficiencies. That's it. So accept where you are and move forward. And then lastly, out of nowhere comes the take advantage of the power of now. Now, the present is such a powerful moment in our lives because, like you said, Tim, it leaves behind a trail as it exists, as it comes into existence. And in the world of data analysis, I won't bore you with the details. We look at trends. So something could have been horrible 5 years ago, i.e., my credit could have been horrible 5 years ago. But I look at the small disciplines that I've done over time, and it's like, oh, wow, I really got better about paying bills on time and making sure things are paid off and so on and so forth. And now I look at that 5-year trend, and though maybe the 5 years prior to that, I didn't make those decisions, the last 5 years I have, and I now see where I'm at in the present. And I now pursue and continue to build from that point. So taking advantage of the power of now is how your past and your future is created simultaneously. So I would say my recommendation is not to take that powerful moment lightly. That's what I have for tonight. Really quick before we get out of here, Glenn, I'm going to have you shoot first. because you released your recent L3 perspective this Tuesday. Let me bring up, I actually have a banner for you. Bam! What? Share a little bit about what the L3 perspective is.
I appreciate that, bro. Yeah, guys, the L3 Perspective is a podcast that me and my partner do. His name's Cameron Macias. But the L3 Perspective, we talk about life, we talk about love, we talk about leadership. These are three very essential pieces, three essential topics that affect everyday life. And so, we have organic conversations with our guests, and through that organic conversation, practical principles are given. And if that one person that's watching or listening to the episode are able to take something away, our whole goal is just to provide value through our organic conversations in our circle of people. And so, take a listen in. That's the YouTube channel. We're on IG. We're on every YouTube or every streaming platform, podcast platform. So again, it's just the L3 Perspective. Appreciate it, Ro. Thank you, man.
No problem. What day and time?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. So we release every Tuesday at 5 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. So every Tuesday you will see an episode drop in, but either between Cam and I, and or one of our guests joining us on the episode. So every Tuesday, expect a new episode drop in. We just released this today. We just released episode 26. We started in November and we've been consistent. And the goal is to continue to be consistent, continue to raise the bar as we elevate the L3 perspective.
Appreciate you, brother. Like I said, you keep people that are in your tribe that are growing progressively, and that's one of the things that really put Glenn and I back in contact, was being able to see his content coming out and being like, "Yo, I like what you're doing." The other thing that we have coming this week on the first row, we do have tomorrow the Wednesday word. Can't help. Every time I say that, I gotta say the double word. But tomorrow's topic will be the hole in the bucket. Man, I can't wait to talk about this topic because I've had this topic in my cell phone for like 2 or 3 months, and I cannot wait to talk about the holes in this bucket. I feel like part of what the men's circle is kind of repairing some of those holes that we as men have had in our buckets, trying to carry the weight of the world, trying to carry the water of the world in our bucket full of holes in it. And so I'm just grateful to be on this platform with other like-minded men that have unique experiences to them, and to be able to patch up some of the holes that are in my bucket. And hopefully you guys are feeling the same as far as patching up the holes in your bucket. So tomorrow, Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the Wednesday Word is live. We're on season 4 of the Wednesday Word. I have no idea what episode. It's episode whatever, but season 4 that we're on in the Wednesday Word. So if you aren't doing anything, come and catch it live. Love the interaction in the live chat. If you are doing something, catch the replay. Love the interaction in the comment section as well. But other than that, that is everything that I have for you this evening. I would like to once again thank each and every one of you for being up here on the panel this evening. Salute to you, brothers. Thank you for your vulnerability, your transparency, and helping to build a community that I believe is going to thrive well into the future. And it will be something that our children's children will be able to look back at and say, yeah, my pops was there, or my grandpops was there. But other than that, as always, if you like this video, please share it. If you share it, please like it. We're happy to engage with you, as you can see in the live chat. And I'm happy to engage with you in the comment section for the first 7 days that the content is up. After that, we move on to the next week, next content. But other than that, until the next time, one love, peace, and God bless. Thanks for sitting on the first row.